john@rte.ie.
Well, in the late 1970s, a filmmaker and his family travelled all around Ireland. They immersed themselves in telling the stories of Ireland's traditional crafts and in making a marvellous series called Hands. David Shaw-Smith is that filmmaker, and he has revisited some of the craftspeople from the original series for a new series called In Good Hands, and he's in the studio in Dublin now. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
I'm actually not far from Ardra, and I know you went back to Ardra, didn't you, David, to find out about the Donegal weavers. What did you find?
I certainly did, and I went to visit my old friends Conal, Jimmy and John McNeilis, and it was a wonderful experience. And it was I was kind of sort of nervous going up there, wondering what I would find and who might have passed away, because a lot of the people have passed away, but it was just very pleasurable to meet them. And to walk into the weaver's shed and to sit down in front of the loom that I remember filming, and to see the material on the loom just there where they had walked out and stopped weaving. It was very, very reminiscent of, and poignant.
Are there many of them left, David? For instance, the Donegal weavers. Are there many left today?
There still are, yes. There are 100 weavers now, there were 100 weavers when I was making the film, and now apparently there are only 5 left, which is very few.
Tell me, David, about the making of the original series. Is it true you travelled around with your wife Sally and your children? I mean, what was that like?
Well, when the children weren't at school in the summertime, and we had an old VW van, and we used to pack them into it, and we were great campers, and we could also use a van to sleep in. And they would go off during the daytime, and I would be filming away. And it was a wonderful way of them exploring Ireland, as well as getting to know about the traditional crafts as well. And we all had a wonderful time, and marvellous.
And you got the idea now to revisit. Has it been as interesting, David, to go back to a lot of the crafts? Give me an idea of the ones you're covering again this time.
Well, we did the weavers, of course, and then we did another wonderful one called Powers of the Metal, and saddlers down in Kilcullen, and a tailor in Tullow, and we went to Tutty's shoes, and I'm actually wearing, if you could look under the desk here, wonderful pair of shoes that Tutty's made for me. And the tailor in Tullow made me a most wonderful jacket, which it was too warm to wear today because it's such a nice warm day here in Dublin. But I have it at home, and I wore it the other night, and it's very splendid.
Where did your love, David, come from of traditional crafts? Where did that come from? Where did you grow up, and where did you get the interest?
Well, basically, I grew up in Dublin in the early years, and then I moved to the west of Ireland when my parents moved to near Uachtarard. And I realised years later that the traditional crafts that I'd actually grown up with, both in an urban surroundings and then in the countryside, were actually disappearing, and that nobody seemed to be making any sort of a record of them. And I went to RTE, and having left RTE, I worked in RTE actually as a floor manager for about 5 years, and then I left, and I went to work for Gerrit van Gelderen, who with Eamon de Butler was making a Muchfain Spare. And that is where I learned how to film, and it was just such a wonderful experience. And they were two such gifted people, and you know, sadly, Gerrit is no longer with us, but and Eamon, but I couldn't have had a better training. And then Sally and I went out on our own, and we made a film called Connemara and Its Ponies. Connemara and Its Ponies was the very first film we made. It sold all over the world, and it literally is still selling. And we captured the I think we were the first people to actually film the birth of a foal in the open at night. And I remember we camped in the field with the bloody mare in Dunlochan near Clifton, and she just refused to foal, and we took it in turns to sit in a deck chair outside the tent while the other person got a little bit of shut-eye. And Sally woke me up, and we had the camera ready, and we had a sort of a battery pack light, and we filmed the actual birth of the foal, and as it actually came right out of the womb onto the grass. And then we were able to film it a few days later, galloping around And it was just a little bit of magic.
Oh, that sounds beautiful. And of the crafts you originally did, David, have many of them died?
A number of them have, I'm afraid. And that is inevitable because life moves on. And it was very interesting because a lot of the younger children that had literally been like little kids running around were now sort of running the businesses. And that was very refreshing because it meant there was transition and a continuation. And the other thing which was terribly important to me is I was actually asked if I would go onto the board of the Crafts Council of Ireland, and which I did. And believe it or not, I was on the board for 20 years before I stepped down because I felt I'd been there long enough. But that was, once again, a very, very enriching experience. And it brought me in touch with another group of craftspeople. They weren't the hand subjects, but there were a series called Patterns, and these are new emerging craftspeople who are now well established. And there is one program or one visitation we made to Nicky Moss, and Nicky Moss, the potter down in Bennett's Bridge, was one of the people who formed one of the actual Patterns programs, and most of the others have become absolute household names like Shanu Leather and so on.
And David, 51 years of marriage, is Sally still at your side during these current endeavours?
She's just behind me, actually.
Oh, excellent.
Yes. she's not here at the microphone, but she's in the sound booth just behind me. Listen to me rattling on. And we're still doing exciting things. And I suppose the most exciting thing is working with Gillian Marsh on this new series where we go back and we meet the people that I filmed all those years ago, and it's been a journey of discovery and a delightful experience. And of course, Gillian Marsh is, was the producer and director, and in fact, dreamed up the series the series on tradition. On the Vets on Call series, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, great series, David.
Yeah.
Final question. Have you enjoyed making this series as much as the original?
Absolutely. It's been a delight. And also we had very good cameraman, and the whole thing was such a pleasure. I think the most pleasurable thing was actually the people one met and who remembered you. And as I mentioned earlier on, who were just children when I was actually making the film.
David, it was a pleasure to talk to you, and your new series In Good Hands starts tonight on RT1 TV at 7:30. Well, today's programme was produced by Deirdre Ní Lyon, research was by John Riley, and Paul Macanila, and Cara Hare was on sound. I'll be back with you on Monday morning for a 2-hour bank holiday show. Until then, I want to thank everyone in Ballybuffet here in Jackson's Hotel for being so nice to us. Goodbye.
John at rte.ie